Hello everyone, my name is Vladislav Arnaudu. I'm a climate change expert and a consultant for the development of the market-based instrument in Indonesia. Carbon markets are just beginning their second life. After the adoption of the Paris Agreement, all countries in the world got mitigation targets. They got targets to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. There are many ways you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. There are many ways to mitigate the effect of climate change, and one of the most efficient ways are actually the use of carbon markets. So I think that from now on, you will see the growth of carbon markets in many developing countries, including Indonesia. And these carbon markets provide very good potential for an efficient way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I know that there are different concerns that carbon pricing policies, emission trading could bring negative impact on the economy. And this has been one of the main issues raised by different stakeholders, both in Indonesia and in other countries. And those stakeholders oppose the introduction of carbon pricing. Well, the good news is that as of now, we have numerous examples of carbon pricing options and market-based instruments implemented in Europe. And in Europe, you have actually the biggest market, the European Union Emission Trading Scheme. In some states, in the United States, some cities in Japan, for example, and in other places around the world. And as of now, we don't have a single example of market-based instruments and carbon pricing bringing negative impact on the economy. You'll probably ask me, what is the reason for that? And the reason is that carbon pricing actually allows to internalize some of the externalities. So greenhouse gas emissions, basically carbon dioxide emissions, now have their own price, and they can be included in the investment decisions of different companies. Therefore, introduction of carbon pricing actually allows us to operate in a more efficient way. They allow us more efficient distribution of resources. So they're good for the industry, they're good for the economy of countries. And that's why most of the countries that have already implemented carbon pricing, they're still doing that. And we have the example of the ETS, for example, that has been around for more than 10 years and nobody's talking about scrapping it. On the opposite, the rules are getting tougher and tougher. And there is a consensus that this is something that is good for the European economy. So you shouldn't be afraid. Carbon pricing is not bad for the economy. So if a country like Indonesia or other developing country wants to implement their carbon pricing option, they should first look at the examples internationally. What has happened in other countries? What these countries have achieved? What challenges they have faced? The next very important thing when you talk about carbon pricing is decide why actually you want to implement it. Do you want to increase the competitiveness of your economy? Do you want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? What exactly you want to achieve? So you need to have vision. And after that, you have to design your carbon pricing mechanism, your market-based instrument, in a way that it can function properly, in a way that is understandable. You should have all your regulations in place. You should conduct capacity building. So once this instrument starts operating, it will be understandable and accessible both to those who are directly targeted, like industry or power sector, and also for general stakeholders in different countries. Carbon pricing, has it contributed really to scaling up mitigation actions? And my answer is very clearly yes. Carbon pricing has contributed because carbon pricing actually allows us to go beyond the project-based mitigation activities. You can do mitigation activities on an industry level, you can do mitigation on a sectoral level, and you can do it much cheaper with much less efforts because you have an indicator about your price of carbon. That indicator, as I said before, is incorporated in your investment decision, and in this way you can see significant growth in renewable energy projects, in energy efficiency projects, and other greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. And I really hope that in Indonesia as well, as already happened in other countries around the world, once carbon pricing is introduced, we are going to see a boost, we are going to see a massive scale up of mitigation activities. Well, there is always policy misalignment, especially when it is related to climate change and carbon pricing. The main reason is that when you talk about carbon pricing, you focus on a particular sector, and in that sector you have the general climate change policies, and at the same time you have also the sectoral policies. What we know for sure is that none of these policies have been developed in a coordinated manner. That's why when you start working on a market-based instrument, you will see that there are many cases of policy misalignment. You will see that there are many cases of contradictions between the different policies. This is not a big issue because you will be able, at the end of the day, to analyze what are your policy gaps, what are the contradictions between the policies, and think how exactly to change the existing policy environment in such a way that it will support the efficient implementation of carbon pricing and market-based instruments. I want to thank you once again for watching this video. Thank you very much.